Well, hey everyone, my name is Nathan Jones, and if you're new here, welcome. I like to talk about all things movies, specifically Blu-rays, and today we are talking about two people. Well, actually, we're talking about four, technically, and I'll get to that in a second. But we are actually doing a mini spotlight challenge on these filmmakers, right? These filmmakers, these writers, these producers, these directors. I set out at the beginning of the month to do a challenge where I'm going to be tackling a different director each week. Since I just recently came back from the UK, I've been wanting to do this, but also tackle my collection. So I have decided to choose 4 films from, like I said, any director, writer, etc. And I'm going to be doing that each week. And this first go around, I decided to stick with England. And so I'm going to be talking about an English director and writer. And also next week, I'll be talking about Ireland and Northern Ireland kind of together. And then I will also be talking about Scotland at the end of the month. So we'll have different people involved with that and different spotlights. So today, I'm sure you already see the title, but we're talking about David Lean and Noel Coward right here. So I recently just did a video on this and this challenge that I wanted to do, but I wanted to watch 4 films by a director, and this particular one has the writer as well. Also, he's acts in it and also directs as well a little bit in maybe the first film we'll talk about. But yeah, so today we're going to be spotlighting these films right here. But like I said earlier, there are actually 4 people involved with their partners, Ronald, Neame, and Anthony Havelock-Allan. So both of those people were involved as well. So I think there was maybe the DOP and a producer. So that all 4 of these people were involved with all 4 of these films that we're going to be talking about today. So we're talking about In Which We Serve, This Happy Breed, Blithe Spirit, and Brief Encounters. So we're actually going to be going from 1942, 1944, and 1945, respectively. But before we jump into this, I want to know, have you been following along with this particular Spotlight series? Did you choose a director? I want to know in the comment section down below, who did you choose and what 4 films did you watch? But anyway, let's jump right into the first film, In Which We Serve. All right, so let's now talk about In Which We Serve. From 1942, this came out in the midst of World War II. This is probably one of the best propaganda films I've ever seen. Obviously, propaganda films are not necessarily the best thing in the world, but this one actually has a good message, I like to think. It has a good message in the sense that it's just trying to build the morale of the British people, right, who have been shelled and blitzed as many times as possible, but also just the people who serve, I guess, for the country. But it doesn't seem like overly patriotic, which is something that I really thought was great. But this is also, like I said, it's a very interesting thing because it came out at the exact time that something huge was happening in the world. So that is something to, maybe highlight in this particular film. But this is actually co-directed by Noel Coward and David Lean. So this was actually where David Lean kind of just dipped his toes in directing, because Noel Coward had already been a pretty prolific playwright and had directed a lot of stage plays and things along those lines, and wrote a lot of things. But he wanted to direct. He also even acted in this. He's in the main role. But the thing is, he wanted David Lean to kind of direct the whole thing. And eventually that's what made David Lean, right? So we'll talk about that in a little bit. But this film in particular is fantastic. So it's in the midst of World War II, like I said. We have mostly a bunch of sailors, right, in the Royal Navy. And at the very beginning of the film, you see this ship being built and destroyed, like almost instantaneously. It just kind of time lapses back and forth. And the cool thing about this film in particular, it does follow these men on the ship who are like Coward, like he's on the ship as well, Bernard Miles and John Mills, among a lot of other people in the particular Navy, right, who just got shelled. So, well, the cool thing about this is David Lean's direction actually was able to use, as his editing skills, he was able to do some cool flashback scenes where it was kind of going back and forth between home life when they set sail, in the people that were involved. This is like an everyman kind of film, and it really did showcase that. It showcased like the true faces. It's not just numbers and men who are serving the military. It's actually people who live their own lives, that have a lot of their own struggles at domestic home, and they have loved ones that they're leaving behind to serve in this war. And so that's kind of what this particular film really showcased, and I thought this was a really fantastic production. So honestly, I really liked the way this film was edited. I mean, that's why David Lean, I think, was such a really great choice for this, just going back and forth between those naval battles and the home life. And I think that was what really serves this film and in a contemporary sense, why it's actually still watchable today, even though this obviously came out in 1942 and for a particular war and for a particular time. So definitely feels timeless in that sense. But there's actually really great bonus features that I watched a few of. Interview with Noel Coward scholar Barry Day, who we'll see multiple times on each of these releases that we talk about. I watched a little bit of a short documentary called The Profile in Which We Serve, which was in the making of the film itself. And then there's also a 1969 conversation between actor Richard Attenborough and Noel Coward at the London's National Film Theatre, which I did not watch because it was a couple hours long. But I'm really excited to eventually dive deeper into this film and understand more about the naval history and also just the history at the home life in England, who was constantly being blitzed, but also just showcasing the people who served during this time. So it was a very tumultuous time indeed. So In Which We Serve, have you seen it? Let me know in the comment section down below. All right, so now we're going to 1944, which is still in the midst of war, but this time we are focusing mostly at the home life and also from a time period from 1919, right at the end of World War I, all the way up to 1939, so right at the very beginning of World War II. Even though there's those glimpses that happen around the world, it's really focusing on this family in particular. So I'm talking about This Happy Breed. And wow, I really love this this cover, because I was just in England myself, and so seeing these types of these houses that have been around for quite some time, but also just thinking about the architecture of how much has changed even like now, right? And how many things have changed. But anyway, I really love this cover. Didn't want to go too much on this. So David Lean is now finally directing it himself, and you can actually see himself in the camera work and also in the direction of like who he's focusing on, right? Like who in the family he's focusing on. So this is actually, like I said, it's going through 2 decades, 1919 to 1939, of this family where they have Frank and Ethel Gibbons. So it's the Gibbons family. They have a couple with 3 children whose modest household is touched by joy, tragedy from tail end of the First World War to the beginning of the Second, right? So it really is following those kids, their lives, who they marry, who they have relations with. This actually feels like a very apt film to eventually go into like a Douglas Sirk film, right? This actually feels a little bit ahead of its time. It definitely feels obviously very, very British, right? Very English, and that's one of the things, obviously, that if you watch it today, especially, I don't know if where you're from, but if you watch it in the American context, it looks a little different, right? Just how the class system really kind of works. This is actually a middle class family, and actually there was a little bit of controversy from this film, at least in contemporary standards, because a lot of people think this film looked down a little bit on kind of the middle class and kind of the snobbery of this family in particular, like how controlling they were. So, but I also read something about the middle class having a lot more rules to follow just to make sure that they were in line. So it's a weird film to see just those different decades, but also those relationships. And like I said, felt like a Douglas Sirk film. So it was very enthralling and engaging. It reminded me, like I said, of that type of family where there is a lot of drama going on, but also at the same time, it really focuses on the domestic life. But it also, with David Lean's direction, I think that he focuses on the right things. And this is an emotional journey. I absolutely adore it, and this is probably my second favorite film in this box set, and I highly recommend this film. This is also, I didn't mention, but In Which We Serve is in black and white, and this is in Technicolor, as you can probably see from the cover. But yeah, Ronald Neame, who did this, who also has a great, like I said, his work plus David Lean's direction are really what showcases film in its entirety, and it looks fantastic. But it is a really great drama that I highly recommend. There's really great performances by John Mills, Stanley Holloway, and Kay Walsh. And I also I also, we haven't talked about it, but Celia Johnson, who is playing Ethel Gibbons, we'll see a couple times later in the future. She's brilliant. I love her nonverbals, which we'll get to that a little bit later. But let's talk about the special features for a second. There is a 2008 restoration of the uncompressed mono audio soundtrack from the BFI. Both of these films that we just talked about have that. A new interview about the film with Noel Coward scholar Barry Day, once again, talks about this film and talks a lot about that kind of controversy about the middle class, kind of the politics of the time, maybe the preaching aspect of the film. Interview with cinematographer, screenwriter, and producer Ronald Neame from 2010. So this is actually not that long ago, 2010. I mean, it is, all right, I guess in our standards. But at the same time, it is a really great, I really liked that interview, just kind of picking his mind of where he was at the time and what he did. And it has the trailers. But yeah, this is a really great film. Definitely highly recommend this one in particular. It's beautiful Technicolor, and it is a film that'll make you have some waterworks. And so I definitely recommend this Happy Breed. Have you seen it? Let me know in the comment section down below. All right, so now we're going to move on to 1945, to the last year of the war, but also we're going to go more comedic now. We're going to be talking about Blithe Spirit right here, which is directed by David Lean, like I said, but actually his direction we'll talk about in a second. Less to be desired, but it is Noel Coward's production that he actually wrote, and this was actually a really big hit on the stage play. And this is actually something that there was some differences between that stage play and this adaptation, which we'll get to in a second. But there is the ghastly spirit of his first wife, which we'll talk about. So we have Rex Harrison, who is a novelist who invites a medium, Margaret Rutherford, we'll talk about her in a second, to the house to conduct a seance, because hoping to experience will help a book that he's working on. He's trying to work on this book, and he wants to make sure he can get some help. But little did he know, he summoned the spirit of his first dead wife, who died of a sickness that took her. I don't remember the sickness, but anyway, it was Kay Hammond, who also played in the stage play herself. And then it's a big sever inconvenience for his current wife, Constance Cummings, who has only been with him for I think 5 or 6 years, something like that, 7. And it really is only he can see his first wife, and so it starts becoming a nagging pain. Employing Oscar-winning special effects to update Coward's theatrical farce. So that's kind of where this is. So we have our cast. There's those 4 people. There's the two wives, the medium, and Rex Harrison, right? Rex Harrison's character is very interesting, but he's definitely outshined by everyone else, in my opinion. And I wanted to talk about Kay Hammond and Constance Cummings. They're really fantastic as the wives, but also just the fact that they're dealing with spirits that they can't see each other, right? And so just their constant looking and back and forth and bickering between whether or not Rex Harrison's going mad and crazy is quite a delight. But at the same time, the biggest draw for this film is Margaret Rutherford. She is phenomenal. She is one of the nuttiest people to play this release, and I honestly, she's just one of the nuttiest people to play in this film. And her medium skills are just kind of quackery, right? There's a lot of comeuppance going on. She's very all over the place, saying really random things that why are you saying that? But at the same time, it really kind of comes to fruition, even though she's very amateurish in the way that she kind of holds herself together. But it's really fun too, because she actually, apparently, her and Rex Harrison were not really big fans of her, because Rex Harrison was a little bit more serious, where she was a little bit more all over the place. But she is definitely the one who's remembered from this film. And actually, I would say of the 4 films we're going to be talking about, this is probably the weakest one. But that being said, it is a comedy drama, but it also is trying to get people off the mind of the war at the time. So that's another interesting thing to highlight. But this is just it's a really delightful film overall, and it definitely was a breath of fresh air, going from kind of the more serious films that we had just really encountered to something like this. And actually the play and the film itself have quite a bit of difference, at least at the end as well, but I won't get into that if you want to see this film. It is only 96 minutes, so it's perfect timing. We go down in the amount of time that we have each film. So the first film is the longest, all the way up to this last film that we'll get to in a second. But yeah, what I was mentioning earlier about David Lean, though, is he actually was... him and Coward did not get along with this particular production, because apparently David Lean more or less was contractually obligated to do something like this, and so he really didn't put himself into this, because I guess David Lean was not really that funny, and so that's where his camera work didn't really suit the film itself. So it was very standard. It wasn't like this Happy Breed where you could really tell he was putting himself in these different shots, but also what is he focusing on? What is he directing, right? And that's where there's I guess a famous line from Noel Coward, which I'll butcher, but it's more or less, "You fucked up the best thing that I've ever done." and that's kind of where that comes from. But they would work again later on in 1945 to a much better film, which we'll get to in just a second. But have you seen Blithe Spirit? Let me know in the comment section down below. I think it's definitely a fun one, but definitely the weakest of the bunch. And we're actually going to jump from this one to the strongest of the bunch. All right, so still in 1945, the strongest film in the set. And I honestly don't really know how to talk about this film, but I'm talking about Brief Encounter. This film is a 5-star film. This film blew me away. I loved it so much. And, you know, I was just talking about with Blithe Spirit, you really couldn't tell David Lean's direction in it. There wasn't much heart in it. Obviously, it was more of a comedy and not a really great adaptation, but the opposite effect happened here, where obviously it's based on the name, Brief Encounter, but it's on a train platform, a married doctor who's played by Trevor Howard, who was an unknown at the time, and a suburban housewife, Celia Johnson, we brought her up again, by the way, enter into a muted but passionate and ultimately doomed love affair. So these are both married people who happen to meet on a train. It just happen to, bump into each other a couple more times and eventually kind of fall for each other. And it is the most adorable thing, but also at the same time, the most tragic thing. And there are so many sequences in this movie I just don't want to spoil, because I want you to watch this movie. This is my highest recommendation. This is a film, I don't want to speak about it too much because, like I said, I don't want to jinx it. But this movie moved me a lot, and I adored it. And honestly, like I was saying earlier about Celia Johnson, her nonverbals are just incredible, right? She acts so well with her face, her movements, and then with Ronald Neame and also David Lean, they were able to capture Celia Johnson in an incredible way. And I can't recommend this film enough. I feel like I'm just repeating myself here because I don't want to give anything away, but Celia Johnson and Trevor Howard are phenomenal in this. There's also really great settings in this train station. This is also in black and white. I haven't mentioned, but the first film was in black and white. The next two are in Technicolor, and then this one's back in black and white. But it's perfect. It's perfect for the setting, the train station that's you're mostly in. Also, maybe the shop next to the train station, and a couple of other locations where they're going out throughout the day on their daily errands that they meet every Thursday, which I think is the most adorable thing. But yeah, this is a film that it's a 5 out of 5. It's something you need to watch. There's a really great score from Rachmaninoff and some really phenomenal performances, and it's literally the film that I can't gush about enough. But let's talk about the special features a little bit. 2008 restoration, audio commentary from film historian Bruce Eder, a new interview about the film with Noël author scholar Barry Day, of course, a profile of Brief Encounter, a short documentary from 2000 on the making of the film, and David Lean, a self-portrait, a 1971 television documentary on Lean's career. I had watched all of those special features except for the documentary because it was a little bit longer, but man, oh man, this film is a must. And this is actually Spy Number 76. I believe this film is actually outside of this box set, so if you decide not to get this box set, you can get this film, I think, by itself. But yes, so this was the box set, and I also was able to read a little bit of the booklet as well. And I just found the four people involved, their relationship is just fascinating. So really, this spotlight is on David Lean, Noël Coward, Ronald Neame, and of course we have the last person that I'm mentioning, the producer, Anthony Havelock-Allan. But wow, this was a really great release, and I'm super stoked about doing this in the future with more directors, more actors, more people who are involved in these films with this Spotlight series. So next week we will be covering an Irish director, and we'll get to that in a second. But before we do that, have you seen any of the films by these filmmakers, these people involved with the film? I would love to know in the comment section down below. Definitely check this out. This is a really great release. There's a lot of really great stuff in this box set. And also just a really great duo, all right, and with two completely different personalities, with Noël Coward and David Lean. But yes, I'm very excited to jump next week, like I said, into an Irish filmmaker, and we'll talk about 4 films from that director. But yes, let me know down in the comment section down below, what you think of these films? Were you able to jump in on the Spotlight series? I would love to know that in the comment section down below. Thank you so much for watching. Give it a like, comment down below, share, hit the notification bell, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. I'm not jonesing around.